really delighted, and we're going to be joined by Vicky Janaway, who's the Chief Client Officer at the Gate, who are part of MSQ, and Will Harrison, Group Brand Director at the AA. And we're going to be exploring some of the key factors that led to their successful collaboration, and the work behind what's come out of the collaboration as well. And it's a great story. It's obviously a very iconic brand. And they're going to talk about how they built sort of one clear brand and comms expression that works across multiple propositions and divisions of the AA. So do you want to give us just a quick intro? Vicky, start with you, if that's all right.
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Really excited to be here. We've got some good stuff to cover off, and it's been a great period of time. We've been working with the AA to develop the campaign. So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks very much.
Cool.
Yeah. Same. If you don't know, I've read the blurb. I'm kind of group brand director, as Adam said, the AA. It's been an amazing journey with the pitch, which we'll go into in more detail. But basically, my role encompasses kind of brand strategy and management at a group perspective at the AA, as well as kind of marketing comms from a media and production angle as well. The team to support.
Amazing. So let's get into it. So Will, I want you to kind of kick us off. So we want to kind of go back sort of chronologically and talk to us about how this pitch originally sort of came about, set some context to where the AA was as a business, as a brand, and then sort of what led to the opportunity.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of interesting to go back a little bit before that as well. So I joined the AA 2 weeks before COVID hit in March 2020. So I kind of had this existential crisis of joining a driving brand, and then everyone stopped driving ultimately via COVID. And it was kind of, I suppose, from those early stages, trying to get under the skin of what the AA was about now, what it stood for in people's minds and drivers' kind of lives, and how you could ensure that it retained that relevance as a brand that it's had for so many years into the future. The initial couple of years, the AA were quite reactive in that sense, because COVID meant that we had to react to a scenario where people hadn't been driving but then were going to get back on the road. So how did we work with kind of emergency forces and so on, and UK infrastructures to kind of keep things moving across Britain? We obviously went out with a successful campaign with a previous agency with Adam and Eve, which was Tucker the dog, and that feeling of kind of being back on the road. We then had EV becoming more in the sort of general consciousness, so we jumped onto that and started to think about how the brand could fit alongside EV, ensure that we were kind of relevant from that point of view. But really, where this brief and this pitch came about was the bigger mission for me of the AA, which was to take the AA from being just seen as that single service provider of breakdown to the broader kind of brand that supports you across your kind of driving world and driving life. And that was our mission. That was the thing to ensure that the brand retained relevance beyond just one product area. And obviously, as it's probably not too surprising for people, as cars and technology improves, obviously people are going to break down less. So we need to ensure that we're there for people kind of however, whenever, sort of whatever they drive. So it was that broader mission of single service to multi-service, broadening the commercial kind of the customer appeal of the AA, and then thinking about how we could best go about that with a partner who could deliver a sort of a platform for that, as well as a campaign. So not just the tactical campaign, but also the platform.
Yeah, amazing. Lots of challenges there to sort of wrestle. COVID, EV, so many changes in the industry.
Yes.
So yeah, no, we'll get into the sort of brief and how that was challenging in a little bit. So I guess, Vicky, then, there's a lot of sort of agencies listening into this, and it'd just be interesting to sort of hear from you as an agency, and sort of, I know you're part of a wider group in MSQ. What do you think in terms of your proposition have you been doing right to attract clients like the AA and just get on pitch lists like that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Adam, because it's something we've been thinking a lot about as well, which is that really in terms of the work that we create, that's, you know, one of the most important things for us is creating bold work that will change categories. So that was part of what was really exciting about the brief with the AA, was that there was this ambition that Will was talking about in terms of driving world and driving confidence beyond breakdown. And so for us, if you think about the work we'd done with Childline, which was very insight-led, or more recently with brands like Smarty, where it's tackling quite complex businesses and making it really simple, I think it's the combination of those two things that's really what we believe is setting us apart. So for us as an agency, we talk about creating work that walks through walls. To do that, it has to be underpinned by insight, but then it has to also really be bold, creative work that will make a difference. And so hopefully that's one of the reasons that Will and the team kind of shortlisted us, and then we kind of took it on from there, really, to create the campaign that we're all so proud of. But definitely I think the combination of insight and then the bold work and ambition as a partnership, as an agency and a client working closely together with a shared ambition, I think is a key thing of what we've been really focused on when looking at new business, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been noticeable because I've seen, you know, the Gate, you know, over the last couple of years have really sort of shone through, and you know, strong leadership as well, I think, at the heart of that. So okay, so Will, talk us through the brief then itself. So you know, when you did go to market, what were you sort of looking for in an agency partner, and what were you asking them to deliver for you guys?
So I'll talk first of all, I suppose, about what the brief was, sort of following on from what I was just saying, the mission that we had at the AA, and then I'll talk a bit more about partner. For me, it was, and like all these things, right, it's trying to sort of move the complexity away from it and make it literally as simple as possible. Although Vicky will probably laugh at that because there were quite a lot of pages behind the brief, or the simplification of the brief. But really, it was like, how do we package this up in a way that makes it really compelling and exciting for an agency to get stuck into, so that we can use their expertise, so they don't have to worry about all of the kind of commercial challenges, shifting of budget, shifting of timing, all of that stuff, the lovely stuff that I have to do inside of the business. They can literally get their creative brains behind how you position the AA and move it forward. The brief ultimately was, how do you come up with a new positioning for the AA and platform ultimately for us? So what is our kind of mantra, our line that sits with the logo and the brand for now and the future? And then ultimately, how is there a marketing campaign that comes off the back of that? So it was twofold. It was the kind of positioning that would help inform new identity, new tone of voice, a new sonic, advertising, things like that were kind of the building blocks of the brand and how the brand is perceived and seen, as well as the kind of tactical campaign that obviously everyone gets excited about in terms of the advertising. And it was important that it was those two, because I feel quite strongly that if you just focus on the tactical advertising, you kind of lose the point on the positioning and why you're doing those things. And the way I delivered that clarity was via kind of a three-pillar approach, which was what we want to achieve, which was basically, for the first time in the AA's history, group commercial objectives rather than just one P&L's objectives. Who we want to go after, so what does the market look like, and what does the customer kind of propensity to buy look like from a group driving products and services perspective. And then the why, so the purpose of the organisation. So that was at the heart of how we could position, like, why do we even exist? Why do people even care about the AA, and why are we important in people's lives? And the purpose in particular, I think, well, Vicky will probably come on to this in the work, you know, played a big role in that, because we talk about confidence, basically providing confidence for drivers now for the future. So that was a really good hook to go off. And then there's obviously this broader picture of how do you bring those group objectives and a group view of market and drivers kind of moments across their life, and package that up into a platform and a position as well as a campaign. I've probably I've tried to make it sound simple, and then I've probably not. But in our mind, it was those three pillars, and then it was the kind of positioning and the campaign. And in terms of who, well, we'll maybe come on to that a bit. But we work with oyster catchers, and it's kind of how do you look at what's available in the market. For me, it was about kind of agility. It was about collaboration. It was about being able to look at people in the eyes and kind of say, are they up for that mission with us, really? Because the AA is one of those kind of legacy brands that's got all sorts of quirks and ways of working. So I needed to know that we were kind of in it together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And I think, it's not uncommon what people are looking for. And like, just when you were sort of leading into that brief, then was there a sense, like, in terms of the AA, the proposition, or understanding a bit more about the consumers, were there sort of indications that you weren't being understood, or consumers were changing their buying habits quite dramatically, and therefore that this was the right time to do this?
Yeah, so there was kind of a commercial imperative in the sense of, if we just keep trying to sell breakdown to people who are breaking down less, then that's not necessarily a very viable business model long term. And also we've got strong developing businesses that fit a broader portfolio. So there was kind of, there was that commercial sort of imperative to it. But the other thing that I suppose is interesting that I like to do in a brand role is I go and actually just ask employees as well as external customers what's actually going on in terms of their perceptions of the brand. And what was quite noticeable was, there was a lot of internal pride about what the AA does, and there's fantastic stories that we hear day after day of kind of members being saved by the roadside and learning to drive, all of those great things that we do. But there was also a worry for me in this kind of old-fashioned traditional view of a members club that felt a little bit more male. And I mean, in some cases, when we did research, we were being described as kind of like an old-fashioned male white cricketer, which, no offense to cricketers, but it was kind of how do we ensure that we're on the front foot with the next generation of drivers, right? As well, without alienating all of those people who've loved the AA and been loyal to the AA for decades.
Yeah, amazing. Well, you obviously came in at this inflection point of the business as well, and so much sort of coming together. So cool. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to sort of hear that sort of perspective, because we obviously, just everyone knows the AA, but we don't necessarily see the inner thinking right behind the brand. So Vicky, you then obviously hear about this opportunity, I presume through oyster catchers, and how did you sort of, Will, maybe shut your eyes to this bit, how did you qualify the opportunity, and how did you decide to pitch, or was it always like you're going to go for this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%, Adam, really, because it's just one of those brands that you kind of have on your shortlist of brands you want to work with when you set out. It's like kind of heartland, backbone of Britain stuff. So like Will says, at its worst, it's sort of associated with the older sort of sense of the brand. So that opportunity to reinvigorate it was a huge one for us, but also to just work on such an iconic brand was amazing. And actually, to then go forward into the briefing, which, as Will has explained, was incredibly thorough, but fundamentally was incredibly passionate. So the ambition was really clear, but there was just a huge amount of energy as well. So in terms of us going for it, you go, of course, this is a massive brand. We absolutely want to go for it. But also everything that came into it throughout the process just continued to cement that further. So as I say, the briefing was full of energy, but really clear. So you could see that, the team had put a huge amount of effort into thinking about it, and us all going down to Basingstoke and kind of seeing it in action and actually getting a real feel for the heritage and what that means. So going right the way through from where the brand originated from and the kind of the history of it right the way through to today. But then the supercharging bit of the brief is, what's the future of that? What does that look like? So what an amazing opportunity. It's not just going, we need to do a new brand campaign, or what does 2023 look like? It's going, this organization is on a massive mission to completely transform itself and also be hugely supportive to its existing members, but also taking new drivers on that journey as well. I mean, that's a gift of a brief. So yes, hugely exciting for us, and yeah, we loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I thought you might say something like that, because it's iconic, and like, as I said, everyone knows it. I mean, to me, they've always been the fourth emergency service. That's the thing, and it's such an iconic British brand, right? That you don't forget. So let's talk a bit about the process then. You obviously worked with someone like Oyster Catcher, so it'd be good to understand sort of the benefits of that. And then we sort of spoke previously a little bit about how you ran the pitch and engaged sort of wider stakeholders. So in any pitch scenario, I know you've got to think about C-suite, procurement. There's private equity involved in the AA as well. So we'll talk us a bit about the process, how it was designed.
Yeah,
came together.
Yeah, so we worked primarily with Jill Huber at Oyster Catchers, who I think is pretty well known across the industry. I think the benefit there was, however simple your kind of brief is and your ambition is, and however clued in you are to the marketing and advertising industry, it is useful to get a perspective and a kind of latest perspective on that. So for me, I suppose the benefit of that is it's kind of pairing the business kind of need, objectives, capabilities, ways of working with what the latest market is kind of offering, right? There's always a commercial element to that, but that I didn't like sort of that dictating things from the start. There's a lot of merit, right, in the ways of working and how those teams are going to perform alongside the brand that you've got, and every business has got its own kind of quirky ways of working or legacy or not, if it's a completely new business. And it might look great on paper, that agency and client relationship, but if the people don't quite see eye to eye and don't get excited about the mission and the ambition, then you kind of lose your way a bit. So that was good. And the guys there at Oyster Catchers, you just kind of work closely with them. They keep you up to date on that. They know the people pretty well, and you feel more confident making those bigger decisions. As always, I mean, it's a bit of a thing, right, client side, but you kind of need to back up the decision making. There's always a bit of an internal PR job to ensure that you're doing things in the right way. I do try and remove as much of that kind of red tape for the sake of it as possible, but there's always an element of multiple opinions and getting a kind of neutral view and things. But it's all dependent on what business you're in and what budget you've got and the ways of working and so on. But that certainly worked really well for us. And the way we then structured that process was kind of after initial kind of market orientation at a broader level based on what we want to achieve in our brief. There was then kind of longer shortlist where there were chemistry sessions, and then following those chemistry sessions, cut it down to 3 final agencies who we then did a strategy session with, a creative session with, and then a final pitch ultimately with. So through each of those sessions, you get a really good sense of the team, the ways of working, whether you see eye to eye, how well they're responding to that brief from both a strategic and creative sense. And then in terms of internal stakeholders, I mean, this was one of the things that actually I think worked really well. It's potentially quite scary, but I pulled in our CEO, who was relatively new to the business under our sort of latest private equity takeover, and I don't think you'll mind me saying doesn't have a background in marketing and advertising. So it was kind of bringing him in, keeping him up to speed and educating him, giving him the facts that he needed, but also making him part of that journey actually was hugely valuable for us. So again, depending on your business and your brief and your need, it is something to always keep in mind at what stage you bring in the kind of the senior heavies, because having the MD of our roadside business and our insurance business, as well as our CEO, involved in the process. They were in person in the final pitch, but I was updating them after the back of the strategic pitch session and the creative pitch session. And again, I was just trying to simplify in the kind of the what, who, and why structure and timeline with our CEO as to what we were trying to achieve, how we were achieving it, and where we were on that timeline. And it just felt like he was very clear on what we wanted to achieve by when, and how we were kind of going through those stage gates, really.
Yeah.
And hopefully, to add, I suppose, hopefully they get excited about the work as well. I mean, one of the key things here is like, we are actually at the AA kind of saving lives sometimes, but majority of marketing and advertising is not about saving lives. So, how do we get them excited about how we can bring vision of the business to life?
Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, both in terms of how you're looking to empower the agencies and give them the freedom to, like you said, express their quirkiness or whatever it is, which I think every agency wants to do. And if they're too bootstrapped by the brief or the process, I think it can be, not in your, advantage. And then at the same time, the communication internally and bringing the CEO, I mean, that's quite a risky move, and could go either way. And, if they get too involved, or if they get too controlling over you, you're kind of like a bit hampered in certain ways and wrestling what you want as well. So I think it just needs a lot of trust, I suppose, on both sides, and a lot of good communication and belief in each other.
Definitely, yeah. Communication is key, right? So yeah, trust comes from clear communication and being able to articulate that in a way that your CEO is going to understand. So understand your audience. Like, if you get excited and just talk to him about the script, is going to think that it might be a bit frivolous, or, how do you root everything in the way he's thinking about the world?
Yeah.
Or she. It's he in my case.
We'll come on to talk about it because it was, as I said, the creative work is quite bold. So, it's also another challenge. You're not selling in something that's, run of the mill here. So, which we'll show the creative work shortly. So we're just, Vicky, then obviously on your side, I guess it'd be good to get your perspective of the process. And, if you guys sort of had any tricks up your sleeve during the pitch process, what do you think got you ahead? If you're willing to share those in a secrets of how you pitch, but what do you think led to you being successful in this process?
Yeah, I think so. Partly it's building a bit on what Will was talking about around the stakeholder engagement. So throughout the process, in terms of us getting behind the kind of shared mission, having that stakeholder involvement all the way through was Will. And to start with, obviously that was being handled by Will, but in the pitch process, it felt incredibly meaningful to have the CEO and the MDs of the business in the room as part. And as you say, it's bold, and that in itself is interesting and a bit risky, which we find quite interesting anyway. But to have those key people in the room made everything feel even more important, like really showed the fact that everyone was hugely valuing the job to be done. But also for us, just galvanized us even more in terms of wanting to continue working together. And also there was a real feeling of respect. So you talked about trust, but there's a huge amount of respect in that as well, in terms of bringing people into the process and being respectful of that decision making. So again, it was testament to the experience of the pitch, but also to the way it was run, that we never got the sense that things were at odds, or, sometimes if there's a bit of a disconnect between some various stakeholders and so on, everybody was incredibly respectful of people's expertise and what they wanted to bring to the decision-making process. So that coming through for us kind of spurred us on even more. So I would say that it probably was less about tricks from us per se, but more about the fact that at each stage it made us want to pull out even more of the stops. So I think you've talked before, Adam, about kind of pitches need 110% of the agency behind it. So without wanting to sound like somebody on The Apprentice, we probably gave it 150%, because we literally just got everyone behind it. We're going, this is a huge brand that we all want to work on, that's, you know, for some of us has been defining in terms of our, you know, lived experience, or as you say, kind of famous advertising that you want to be part of. So it was very much about bringing everybody into the process. So right the way through the agency, at every level, everybody had a part to play and a piece to feed into it, to feel in and to kind of really get the feeling of being part of it. And so hopefully that came across in the pitch process as well from our side. There was a huge amount of energy and kind of willingness from us to do it, and that feeling felt like it was going both ways. So I think, as you say, it was less about tricks, but more about the fact that what we really wanted to do was show that we really, really wanted it, because we really, really did.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, I work with agencies sort of day in, day out on, you know, whether that's qualifying opportunities at an early stage or throughout a pitch process. And, you know, the one thing I think agencies are always looking for is that commitment on the other side, and that investment. And, like, you know, there's no bigger commitment than bringing a CEO into the pitch, and it shows what the relationship means. You know, some people keep their agency relationships hidden from, you know, the rest of the business and the CEO. Whereas, you know, it just shows how important the brand and marketing is to the AA. You know, that's what it tells you as an agency. So you feel like an integral part of this kind of mission, like you're talking about, Will, how you're going to grow this business, and you're all in it together. And that, to me, that's where any successful partnership needs to stem from. You know, and you can see a lot of, you know, the opposite, the antithesis of that is like the supplier relationship, where it's like, you do what I tell you to do, and you still see a lot of that in today's world. And it's trying, for an agency perspective, it's trying to know where a brand or a client is going to put you, and where they see that relationship going. So Will, you had, obviously, you know, I know there were some other great agencies in the mix, Anomaly London, I think New Commercial Arts, unless Campaign are not telling me the truth, but you know, what do you think, you know, made the Gates stand out, and you know, any insight into sort of how you scored this, or was there a criteria and things like that, you know, to make your decision?
Yeah, I mean, so the scoring, you kind of then agree, you know, with Oyster Catchers based on that original brief. So it's sort of a combination of, you know, the fit for the business, what that team looks like, not just the team in the pitch, but the team that are going to actually work on it kind of after the pitch. You know, and then ultimately it was, you know, how well does this fit with what we're asking for, really, across both the strategic, creative, and then this kind of summary final pitch of all of those ideas coming together. And what we were interested in was how well the agencies kind of grasped the both positioning and marketing comms. So rather than just diving straight into this is what the ad could look like type thing, which for me has always been the tactics, really. How are they getting under the skin of the business a little bit more, and understanding how we might think about driving moments and driving in culture and that positioning a little bit more broadly. And I think there were a few things really that stood out about Vicky and the team at the Gate, which were them personally, they were very egoless. There was kind of just a real desire to listen to the kind of the brief, and to respond to that, and then both respond to that, like, personally, in a very straightforward and kind of simple way, like making that feel like you're kind of reducing the challenge to something that feels easier to kind of to work on together. So there was sort of, there was the personal aspect, but then amazingly, you know, that shone through in the work. So I suppose that simplicity of the idea came through for me in spades in both the always ahead positioning and the it's okay, I'm with the AA kind of tactical execution of that. And the strength of the work combined with this, the fact they listened attentively, the fact that it was egoless, just felt like there was going to be a really strong kind of working relationship there as people, as well as the work, I think, being able to really stretch and define that next stage for the AA.
Yeah, and that did that feel, I don't know, unusual to sort of other relationships who maybe you've had with agencies in the past, or were there? I'm just wondering if there were certain things that sort of stood out to you that made that more evident. Like, you know, was it like a phone call on a Friday, or like you were able to drop a quick WhatsApp message, or, you know, in terms of reality, how did that sort of, or was it just
well, there's a bit of its gut feel, but I suppose when you've been experienced, I've worked with quite a few different agencies like Wyden's, AMV, obviously more recently Adam and Eve when I first came in. They all have their own strengths, but I suppose what you hope is that in that moment of that particular mission and what you want to achieve commercially, as well as reflecting on how the business is going to work with the budgets that it's got, you then need a partner that feels like it's up for that challenge. I think one of my bugbears has been a sort of in the box type mentality of, we are this type of agency, we do this sort of thing, here's the brief template, fill it out and we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks, rather than more of a modern approach to working, more of an agile kind of understand. It doesn't mean that you don't challenge the brief or that you're not, you know, constructively moving things forward, but an ability to understand the challenges in a slightly more broader sense of them, rather than just funneling them straight into, well, that's that kind of brief, we'll give it to that team over there, and then you don't see it for a while type thing. I think there was a bit of magic in the fact that the Gate are on this trajectory, as the AA are with private equity as well, and that we're both kind of committed to growth and pushing, you know, PR and our role, you know, within the marketing industry and beyond, really, and doing that with a sense of like a real clear like commercial ambition, but also just customer, like, let's make this, you know, interesting and distinctive and differentiated really for drivers and for customers.
Yeah, no, I thought it's really interesting. I think, you know, when I always find, you know, the right partners find each other in these pitch processes, right? And I feel like the way you're describing it is that you're just sort of on the same page, right? And it will almost, I don't know, like, we'll come on to you, Vicky, and your thoughts on the process from your side as well. But it almost felt like, rather than trying to win the pitch, you were on the mission to help AA build this brand, right? And I think sometimes when you get the thought of, I'm trying to win this piece of work commercially for my agency, and actually think about, what are you here to do? Suddenly all of that stuff goes away, and suddenly Will starts feeling like, hold on, I've got a partner in the room, and you end up winning. I think sometimes the winning gets in the way of winning, if you know what I mean. But it'd be good just, you know, share us with, from your side, like, you know, was there anything you sort of learned about the agency sort of during this process, and thoughts around what you think it takes to win, you know, a pitch like this?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something around that shared ambition for sure, and that kind of shared growth ambition. So we talked about being partners for growth in the pitch, and actually I think, Adam, to your point, that it was very much about helping the AA grow on their mission, and, you know, where they're headed in terms of supporting drivers in their driving life. Felt like a really big ambition, like it was really bold. It wasn't just, we've got an NPD that we need to get out, or we've got a retail calendar we need to deliver against. It was this huge, really big, distinct, clear vision. And so really listening to that for us is beyond just taking the brief and, as you say, kind of answering the brief and thinking about winning the pitch, which is of course part of it, but actually really getting under the skin of it and really thinking about what it means. So Will was saying at the start about some of the preconceptions around the AA that we kind of all know. And we did a huge amount of kind of insight gathering and research as part of the process. which we were able to do because the timings were so good and proper. We were able to do some really good thinking. And so unlocking those insights was much more broadly about the business in its entirety around all of the other P&Ls, not just about solving a kind of roadside challenge per se. And so what did that translate to in terms of learning about the agency is just, I guess, that age-old point of continuing to ask more questions of the brief, really listen to what's going on, think about what's being said, but also what's implied, and just going deeper and deeper to kind of unlock bigger thoughts and deeper insights, really, that can then, you know, lead to good work, great work. So they're kind of the classic things that we know we need to do, but sometimes when you're running fast, they can drop by the wayside, or as you say, if the ambition isn't set out at the start, which in this case it was, that it was very much about growing the business and not just a kind of delivering the next campaign or moving things on a little bit. It was, you know, this huge step changes, huge leap forwards. And Will was saying actually at the briefing in Basingstoke, Jakob was saying about becoming even bigger and even more beloved. And that's just a great ambition to set for an agency as well, to go, how do we really bring to life those kind of latent preconceptions about the brand in a positive sense, that, as you say, people have got that relationship with the Fourth Emergency Service or some of the iconic advertising of the past. You know, how do we really, really spur that on and take it to the next level? So that's probably, yeah, for the agency, it was really taking all of that on board.
Oh, you're on mute, Adam.
Sorry, had some builder outside banging, and I was like, I don't want that getting in the way of the sound. But yeah, I was just saying, like, asking the right questions, obviously key to that, and interrogating the brief to get them to the place they need to be. So yeah, so look, I'm really keen to, you know, show the work that obviously came as a result of all this, and I think it was, as we discussed, it's incredibly rare that the creative work that was shown in the pitch actually ends up going live and actually being run with. I'm sure there were some tweaks to it, but you know, the essence in itself. So Vicky, just talk us a little bit through the creative process, some of the insights, the strategic platform, and then I'll show the work, and then we can discuss that a little bit.
Great. So yeah, so I think we talked about this notion of confidence and creating confidence for drivers. So that was really the start point for us, was going, it's about driving confidence. And then I'll just talk a bit about the insight, because that for us was where we were able to take things up a level, which was around thinking about what driving means today, but where it's headed. And so driving in itself has transformed massively from how we knew it. And so learning to drive being a rite of passage, or, you know, getting your first car and so on, it's more complex, whether that's from an environmental perspective. So young people are perhaps less interested in driving because of the environmental impact of a car, right the way through to EV then, for example, and what that means, and hybrid, and understanding a whole new world of cars for people that maybe aren't a kind of petrol heads. So moving that forwards, but also in terms of what it is to drive now. So when we did focus groups, we were talking to people across the country, and in London, you've got kind of all these different zones where you can do, it's 20 miles an hour, where you can't go through this, but you can't go through that bit. So that notion of freedom and the open road, driving has become more complex than ever before. So our insight was around a new world of driving, needing a new kind of confidence. So, you know, talking about leveling it up and what does that really mean. And so that confidence, we thought, came from staying ahead. So with the AA, how does the AA help drivers with their new kind of confidence? It's about being always ahead. So being truly on the side of drivers. And when we were being briefed, and as I said, we went back and we were looking in the archives of all of the history of the AA. The AA has always been on the side of drivers, and still is today, in terms of representing drivers when that comes to things that are meaningful and standing up for drivers. So that for us, we could then translate that into our insight that it's true and part of the kind of history of the organisation. So we took that principle of confidence, and that led us to the line around it's okay, and with the AA as the kind of creative expression of that. And then really that comes to life across all of the P&L. So we did look at the framework that would sit underneath that to go, does this work across all of the different parts of the business? And what does it mean to be with the AA that's over and above an experience you might have with another provider? So it's about leveling up at each point, going, what is it that the AA provides that's different? What is it the AA provides that gives you more confidence? And so naturally then looking at a vignette approach, we were then able to bring that to life in the vignettes and tell a story of people that had a new kind of confidence when it came to their driving life. And so we have vignettes that talk specifically to types of products from within the AA, but we've also got vignettes that talk to confidence as well, just more generally, that this feeling of when you're with the AA, that it's okay. And it's been really great seeing it live and breathe, because we tried to give it the freedom to be able to extend, not to put shackles on it and say it has to do this, it has to fit this thing. That the strategic approach underpinned everything, which gave the creative even more freedom to push it further. So that's probably the setup for the creative at this stage, Adam, in terms of us wanting to show it, and then I can talk a bit more about how it extended even further.
Yeah, definitely. But no, let's share. So no, I think it's a great piece of work. So let's hopefully this works and you can all hear it and I'm not on mute. Is that full screen for you guys? Perfect. All right, let's listen in and watch.
Number 3, 40 quid diesel, please.
There is no diesel at number 3.
It's okay. With the it's okay, Doc. I'm with the AA.
Oh, completely flat.
What's wrong with the car?
It's okay, lads. I'm with the AA. Bombay mix.
It's okay, son. You with the AA? You take the next right, please.
Are you sure?
It's okay. You're with the AA.
With the AA, there's a drive-in service for pretty much anything.
Amazing. Great. Yeah, look, I was saying to Vicky earlier, I love how when you're watching things and sort of humor comes through and you're not sure how serious, when you first initially start watching, think how serious this is meant to be, and then it gets more and more sort of ridiculous as things go on, so you kind of lean straight into the humor side of things, so you know where you stand rather than sort of playing on that edge. But yeah, it's great. So talk us through a little bit about obviously there was a decision to sort of use humor. There was a decision here to sort of create a brand expression across sort of the entire brand portfolio. So yeah, don't mind who wants to sort of jump in here. But yeah, how did that sort of all come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to what Vicky was saying sort of before we watched that, you know, I think based on how I'd articulated the brief, you know, it was just such a clever but simple way of articulating that confidence. You know, the AA has always been so trusted and kind of reliable. So how you bring that to life in that feeling like it's okay, you know, whatever happens, whether it's keys inside your body, you know, or your new car blows up from a meteor hitting it in the parking space. So that kind of it's okay line we felt was really nice, and it fitted well with this sort of vision I had in my mind of like the should have gone to Specsavers type impact, where you create something that fits quite neatly in culture, in sort of broader culture, but specifically in driving culture initially as well. And I think it's got, we're already having a lot of fun. We did obviously last year, but we are going to continue to sort of think about how we can stretch that further and pop up where we might not be as expected and so on, just to ensure that is pulled through. But it's underpinned by always ahead, which is anticipating that. So we bring confidence or give confidence to drivers. Now in the future, how do we do that? We do that by anticipating their needs. So the combination of feeling always ahead with the AA, which is that kind of leadership type mentality and mantra, along with the sort of can be soft, but also sometimes a bit more pushy. It's okay, and can be quite emotional. In certain scenarios, but can be kind of ridiculous in other scenarios as well. Humour for me is a massive win in advertising always. I mean, I think if you can make people laugh, if you make them smile, that's a start. If you can make them laugh, I think you're winning. And whatever people's views on how advertising is shifting more from kind of the bigger screen to the smaller screen, you still want those moments, right, to kind of just ignite something in you, to make you feel something and feel a little bit differently. And for us, it's that combination then of perhaps not going too far, although I always quite like pushing creative as far as we can, but making sure that you're not alienating with a brand that is trusted and reliable, but you're also having fun with it, which I don't think the AA's done enough of, in my view, in the past, and certainly with younger audiences, there's an appetite for that.
Yeah, and you can see how it does sort of tick all those boxes, and also like just the association, because obviously when you look at driving on a flat tire and just you're not focusing in on that, it can be a bit kind of depressing, right? or like the realities of what's going on. I think you've kind of got those sort of associations with all these different parts of people's lives that go on and make it real and bring that sort of emotional connection. And it's just that sort of emotion coming through, I feel, and like it entertains people.
Yeah. There's a lot of humour in the mundane, so I was still talking about that, about how we can extend off the back of just those mundane moments where you think, oh shit, like that. Like misfueling is it's been quite funny because there was a bit of nervousness around that feeling like a different product almost for us, and like not breakdown, but obviously the whole point of this was that we were trying to broaden and stretch the brand. And interestingly, misfueling is something that loads of people come to you and say, God, yeah, I did that once and it was a nightmare, or like the little bump that you have in a supermarket car park or something, which leads to months and months of trying to track down who did it and speak to your insurer and all of that stuff. How do we step in and take away that hassle, but bring a bit of light to it through the confidence of the brand?
Yeah, when you've got the wife sort of waving from the car, his face is strange.
Didn't we, with the whole family was waving, which I really liked, but I think the guest decided felt that it was a bit too much. We had the children waving, so it was like really overhyped, like we're going on holiday feeling. Yeah,
you started to feel too bad for the guy. So I guess on that note, then obviously things like outtakes or what didn't make it, and more sort of thinking about challenges. Like, what were there sort of big challenges that came up during this campaign? Were there times where you guys didn't necessarily see eye to eye and sort of had to sort of navigate, around that? You can be truthful.
Not really. We were talking about this before. I don't think we did. It's going to sound really like sickly sweet, but we did creatively. I mean, there's always people will be probably less interested in this stuff on this sort of podcast, but like, client side, there's always challenges, right? So I'm constantly fighting fires to an extent with how much budget I'm getting, proving the spend, cost management committees, and timing as well. It's really like with all businesses, right? You've got to take your moment. You've got to do a lot of internal PR, but there are things that happen outside of your control. When there are operational challenges, you have to be pragmatic. This is this is important. It's brand, it's advertising. You've got to invest in your brand, particularly if you're on a mission to try and shift the perceptions of the brand. So it's not that I didn't downplay the importance of that, but you also have to be pragmatic about where you sit in the priority of the business. You know, increasingly, I think CMOs and marketeers are coming up against, you know, there's the spend over here to do this, and then there's the spend to actually get more driving school cars out on the road type thing, and that's very hard to compete with, right? But it brings with it an opportunity for you to kind of articulate that challenge in the right way, so that it is deemed to be strategically important. Creatively, I don't think so. I probably get too involved sometimes. Vicky will be nice and won't say that that's the case, but I quite enjoy it. We did, in terms of pushing it, there were definitely vignettes where we wanted to go a bit further, but the powers that be internally, there's only so much we could do. And people kept saying to me, this is really bold. And I was thinking, okay, well, then maybe we must be. But there was one, can we reveal, Vicky, the parachute one? Yeah,
I think
there
so.
was one vignette which was, and it's going to be slightly controversial, maybe for people even to hear this on the call, but there was a vignette that the Gate came up with, which was two people in a plane, kind of like Hollywood movie style thing, and the guys jumping out, the plane's going down, and there's only one parachute left, and one guy, you know, chucks it to the other and says, you know, it's fine, you take it, dives out the plane, and as diving out the plane, just shouts back, it's okay, I'm with the AA. Now, of course, my boss was slightly concerned about the implications of a life and death scenario. We do actually do life insurance, but it was I think it was pushing it a bit beyond. But what it showed me was those, you know, we've had a lot of fun. And again, the Gate are brilliant with this, you know, because it feels collaborative. But, you know, we bring commercial objectives, yes, but also like business insights and driving insights and stuff. And those guys can then jump on those and think about the best way to bring the hyperbolic scenario, but also the more mundane scenario. All of those are kind of funny in their own way, as long as you bring the insight out so that people feel part of it.
Yeah, and I think if you're able to sort of continually think about extensions, then you know you're kind of onto a good platform in the first place, right? That you're not short of ideas for this and where it could go. And then, yeah, obviously just making sure they fit into culture, they're relevant and not offending.
Well, Street Fighter was a good one. Like the Gate were brilliant with that, so they came up with the idea of us partnering with Street Fighter. We put out some out of home. If anyone saw that last year, that was one of those kind of things where anecdotally people would mention that, so you know you've hit on something quite nice, where you can kind of slot it into a different part of culture.
Yeah, no. So just in terms of the results, then I don't know if you're able to share or sort of impacts the work's had externally and internally. Is there any kind of initial reactions or things you're able to share with us?
Yeah, so internally it's been fantastic. People have really embraced it, and I think a big learning there has been stakeholder involvement along the way, but also making this part of people's day-to-day life. So rather than it feeling like an ad campaign, you know, always ahead, then becomes an identity that's part of. And it sounds silly, but you know, PowerPoint templates, the way we talk about things internally in the business, the way things are branded, that stuff matters, right? So seeing it's okay around a little bit more, seeing the new identity that Elmwood, the part of MSQ with the Gate worked on with our new brand identity, brings all of that to life. It's very different, right? Because we've gone from a dog who's like, you know, and everyone can then get the fluffy dog, and it's all very like emotional from that sense, because you could get behind a particular character. This will take a bit longer probably to bed in, but actually it's a lot more powerful as a broader platform, because it extends in lots of different ways, and it underpins a lot of the work that we do internally as well. So that's been really good. And then in terms of like, you know, actual results, the key things for us are like shifting that multi-service awareness, making sure we get first choice product consideration beyond just breakdown. So we've seen some really decent shifts in those perception metrics. But then what's equally kind of exciting is we see the measured results in kind of product search more broadly than just breakdown users on the website, and even things like the new identity actually shifting conversion rates when we do A/B tests online versus old identity and new identity. So where we're using It's Okay in the new font, and examples of that across the website. So kind of a combination of perception and kind of measured. And the other thing I would add that's really, I think is really cool is we measured this kind of thing of how to what extent people attribute that end line with the AA, and we've been tracking it since 2017, so a few years. I don't think it includes the one you referenced about fourth emergency service, because that one probably wins every day. But in terms of the last, what's that, 7 years, we about 70% of people already were attributing that line with the AA spontaneously, which is incredible, really, considering we were only out for sort of 3 or 4 months last year with it.
Yeah, well, it does. It rolls off the tongue. It just connects, and I think you can see the extension this has about giving people confidence is something that all people need in all walks of life, right? And you can see how it can extend into social media and user generated content as well, and because people want to sort of feel and live and breathe that, right? So I saw the Street Fighter stuff. I thought it was really entertaining, so it'd be interesting to sort of see kind of where you guys take this. But I think that's kind of all we've got time for today. Any last minute comments, or are we all good? Perfect.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you, Will. Thank you, Vicky, for sharing the story. Really great to see, a partnership, how it came together from sort of beginning to end, and where we ended up. So yeah, we'll be watching from afar. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today.